Hi, this is a video response to a video that Ivanmike recently uploaded. I'm going to put a link in the description below so that you can watch it. And that video is actually also a video response. And in said video, he talks about complex role-playing games and those that are more rules light or dumbed down. And he mentions a couple of things that are quite interesting. And I'm going to speak of what I think of those things and about my experience with complex and rules light role-playing games and my thoughts on them as well, of course. Well, he mentions that sometimes complex role-playing games have to do with game master trust. That is, you have a firm basis on how to handle situations because the rules of the game indicate how a certain encounter, action, or whatever should be handled. So instead of saying, oh, game master, the ruling or the call that you made isn't appropriate or effective or whatever, instead of having that, you already have the rules to use that as a basis of understanding between the players and the game master on how to handle a particular situation. And actually never thought of it like that. Perhaps I will be able to explain my perspective on complex games when I talk about that in a few minutes. And the other thing that I found even more interesting is when you take a look at things from a different angle, because normally you would say rules light or dumbed down role-playing games are for people that aren't really that smart, that is, that they cannot handle complex rules. But Ivanmike said, let's take a look at things from a different perspective. And he's not like saying that that's his point of view. He's just like raising the question as a sort of like a mental exercise. What if rules light or dumbed down role-playing games are actually for smart people, for people who don't need to rely on rules and can make calls or improvisation on the moment and create different situations that many rules could never hope to cover, because there are situations that really get sometimes too complex within role-playing games, and sometimes it's effective to handle them in a simple way. I think this could also be considered like that, but I can only give my answer at the moment by explaining what I like of complex role-playing games and rules light role-playing games, and the only type of role-playing games that I consider to be dumbed down, which are very specific in my point of view. First, I'm going to talk about complex role-playing games. What I like about them, those that are quite crunchy and have that simulationist aspect to them, is that I really find it quite enjoying to take all those complicated rules, and sometimes they just stick to your head and you run things almost automatically. So for example, when I started playing Hackmaster at first, I was actually thinking, can I actually handle this game? It seems to be quite complicated. But then you just memorize things and you start playing it quite easily, and it surprises you how, as you roll the dice and you're handling things, the way that you have already learned this complex system. So now you know that if your character isn't using a shield, you have a -4 on your defense roll, or if your character is small, if he takes 10 points of damage, you're going to get pushed back. Or if, oh no, if you suffer this damage, depending on the amount of hit points that you have, you'll have to make a check, or you may end up passing out from the pain and such. And it feels really nice. You amaze yourself at how you're handling things effortlessly. So that's something that I really like of complex gaming systems. They feel like a bit of a challenge for me. But I also like the way that they simulate reality, because many of these complex systems have gone through real life tests. Many designers have actually fought with different weapons. Some of them, for example, I still haven't reviewed that setting. Maybe one of these days I will review it. The Cerulean Sea setting for Pathfinder. The designers actually went to a public pool and started using like weapons and underwater and such to see which were more effective and handling different things and such. And so that's another thing that I really like of complex role-playing games. They usually have this solid simulationist aspect to them, and it's really entertaining to see how they translate reality or the laws of physics to this to a fictional environment. And so those are just one of the things that I really like of simulationist games. Oh, some other really important things for me are that I also like the level of detail that you achieve in each skill check or combat situation, depending, because you have different modifiers and different ways to handle all sorts of variables and situations. So when you are telling the story of how you managed to defeat this enemy or managed to climb up that castle, you're going to focus on the smaller details. Oh, that my character was so exhausted, he almost fell down because of, you checked a table to see if that happened, or during combat, oh, my character actually ended up with he hurt his wrist and he can no longer attack as effectively, but he actually managed to decapitate two enemies, and another one he went through the guy's lung with his spear. And so you get all those tiny details, or maybe you fumbled and your leather strap of your armor broke apart and you were fighting all awkwardly with your armor almost hanging out. So all of those details, as I was telling you, they feel like each encounter comes alive with the richness of detail. And as I was telling you, that's what I consider of those complex games. And when it comes to rules-light games, I think they are the best at handling themes and fictional environments that have almost nothing to do with real-world logic. So it's not a surprise that many manga or anime systems are quite rules-light, because in manga and anime, the most outrageous and crazy things happen. So it's almost, it will be quite ridiculous to try to approach them through a simulationist aspect, and rules-light games are perfect for that. Besides that, the most obvious answer would be that games that are dumbed down are really easy to learn, because they have rules that are quite easy to memorize or to learn. And so players usually tend to focus more on the narration or interpretative aspect of role-playing games when using those rules-light systems. Although some could argue that you could also do that with complex systems as well. So where does this issue come from? Well, that is, which one is better? I don't think there is a better system. It depends on what you are craving for the moment, or what you are trying to achieve through a certain system. But I do see some positive and negative things, because, for example, in the case of the complex games, you're going to achieve a very accurate simulation of reality, at least the most that you can achieve that through an abstract mean as a gaming system. But when it comes to rules-light games, you also have a lot of creativity, a lot of room to go nuts with whatever you want to achieve. So for example, if somebody tells you you're playing this game or whatever, now your character is making this attack, how would you describe this attack? And you could go like, oh, well, my character summons like 100 plasma elephants from another dimension, and they just ram at the enemy tank, and when they make contact with the tank, they explode into 1,000 beetles that start shooting lasers out of their mouths. So you can go insane with all of those descriptions, and with the simple rule systems, it's really easy to handle those complicated attacks, so to speak. But I imagine handling that with a simulationist game, it will be quite impossible. There's a reason why a lot of superhero games are somewhat rules light when compared to other systems. So I think that the negativity of negative aspects of each of the systems rather comes from individuals that want to hide their own weaknesses when playing role-playing games. And well, let's make a clear definition of a role-playing game. If you're participating in this experience where you are playing a role and playing a game, it's a role-playing game. If you're acting or handling like an improvised performance, but with no structure or set of rules, to achieve victory or success, well, you're not playing a role-playing game, you're telling a story or acting or whatever. And if you are playing a game with no role at all, that is, you're not engaging with the non-player characters, with the interacting with the world, or playing your part, representing that personality, well, it's going to be more like a board game. So I do think that it's a good thing to keep that sense of balance of playing a role and playing a game at the same time. And as I was telling you, the negative things, well, some people usually cannot handle a particular mental process. So, for example, let's take a look at gamers that like to play complex games. They like those rules, or we like those rules, because I play both complicated and light games, because those rules give us a solid foundation or base to simulate reality. But if someone were to focus too much on that, he could have too much trouble handling improvisation and thinking creatively and originally, because I found people that are quite intelligent, to put it in a way, that they memorize a lot of rules and they know how to handle every situation based on the rules of a setting. But if you tell them something like anything that has to do with magic, for example, or some unexpected twist in the plot line, they simply will not be able, they won't know how to handle it, because they need that guideline. And on the other side of things, I have found many players that play rules light role-playing games, and they're quite like creative and expressive. But when they try to simulate something that needs a bit more, let's say, structure to handle it, so that things just don't go all crazy and loose with no sense of what is effective, or what works for the story, or what works for the system for a particular battle, they simply cannot handle it, because they have problems adding modifiers and considering different factors and the variability of the encounter. So in both cases of those players, instead of accepting that, maybe, for example, the complex gamer could say something like, I'm not creative enough to handle this situation, I have no idea. Or maybe the other rules light player, instead of saying, well, to tell you the truth, I'm not intelligent enough to handle those things, or I need to study more, or whatever, they try to make it like it's the game or the system at fault. So the complex gamer could be like, oh, rules light game, they're for dumb people, you need rules are the way to go. And the simple gamers are going to be like, oh, rules, they're actually a clutch, that we have evolved beyond that, we don't need rules anymore. And so it's basic. I think that the fault rather lies with the players rather than with the systems. However, I will mention right now that I do think there are role-playing games that feel dumbed down. Not specifically, I'm going to handle it more in a general way. And that's when a system is designed dumbed down with the intention of selling more. Because a lot of people are not very good at, let's say, handling their time, their activities, and do not have the time and energy to learn systems. So if you present them with a very simple system, the mom or dad or that are constantly at work and taking care of their children, or even the kids that have to study constantly all the time, they won't have time to learn those complicated systems, and they will say, oh, rules light are the best role-playing games. So that also has to do with the way that you commit yourself to your hobby, and the way that you are organizing your time and your work, how stressed out are you, and that goes too deep at times, because that will also have to do with your life choices and your lifestyle, and how complicated your life is or how simple your life is, etc. So, but overall, I think that each type of role-playing game, complicated games or simple games, have their own place in our hobby. I like to play both, and I also like to play games that are somewhat in the middle, but that's because I feel like a different part of my mind is stimulated with each playing style. So when I feel like getting all creative and original and like that, I play rules light games, but then I also want to stimulate this other part of my brain, to put it in a way, and I want to simulate reality and to memorize all those things and handle all those complicated processes. Both ways, I feel like I am getting massaged in my brain. So I think it basically comes down to your personal preference, and I find it somewhat childish at times when particular players attack other games, but just because they cannot handle those games. That is, when rules like players say, "Oh, complicated rules, they are a thing of the past. We have evolved that, dude." Or if some, let's say, a grognard more on the wargamer side of things, they're going to say, "Oh, those fools, they cannot handle complicated rules. They are so dumb." So I think we need to take a look at things in a different way. And again, I cannot stress this enough, that I think that the only dumbed down role-playing games are those that were dumbed down, compromising the setting and the system just for the sake of selling more for the, what would you call them, the uneducated masses, or however you want to call them. But when you make a rules light system because that's the type of system or game that you want to create, that's great. So it's still quite a complicated issue, but so each one of us has to find his or her own answer, and not to let anybody else to tell you what you should play or not play. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any... Oh, sorry, review! I'm doing a bit of response, you see? I need to play more smarter games. Thanks for watching my video. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.